Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We've got 5 topics to talk about this time for this last sprint. So we worked from January 31st to February 15th, and we had a pretty decent sprint, but as you'll see, we didn't quite get everything finished. So we're going to talk about skill variations, quite in depth, actually. We're going to talk about terrain effects and the first episode of the podcast. Everyone's doing it. And then a little bit about the battlefields, and then playtesting levels 10 through 20. So to get started, first off, the sprint for sprint 11. As you can see, we got this pretty burned down, but early on, I spent a fair amount of time doing some, cleanup and some behind the scenes work and whatnot. And so I didn't really get started deep into this task for this sprint, but then the second weekend here, the dark gray section got going, and as you can see in the list here, we didn't get to do the battlefields, and we didn't get to do the playtesting levels 10 through 20. However, we did get through the other 3 tasks, so let's get into that a moment. So skill variations. If you remember from last time, at the end of January, gameplay was a little bit boring. We weren't really satisfied with, the level of strategic thought necessary, the level of thought really in general that the player would have to, employ to play the game. So something needed to be done. Skill variations was the solution for us, and that seems to be a good solution. So, you can see this P and E. I just have some placeholder icons for this, but this is variants of the Lucky Mallet skill. So the player has a primary action, Lucky Mallet. Again, I'm still missing all the icons because I haven't paid the artist yet and done that whole deal to get some icons. But so Song of Fascination has a separate variation there, and the idea is that the player can then choose to more or less spend more endurance, or perhaps cool down a penalty, or more power in order to do some variation. So we did 3 types of variations so far. That's a variation for additional damage, additional target, and then a type of defensive stance, so that the hero that performs that variation can take less damage. And then each of those skills, or each of those variations rather, requires a higher level of endurance cost or power cost accordingly. In order to do the variations, we had quite a bit of work, so we needed to implement some new buttons and make that functionality work for the GUI, and then we had to implement the actual variations themselves, which wasn't nearly as straightforward as we wanted. In addition to that, I kind of wanted to record a slightly different type of video for this update, and so I recorded some of the events of the actual development, and so I'm share that with you later. Next, moving forward, at the very end, we got to terrain effects. So now we can see that Momotaro is on a hill here, this black icon on the land that he's on, and that hill actually has an effect. So in this case, we have some improved melee and improved range damage if you're on a hill. And so now actually that terrain effect is implemented and affecting Momotaro's performance in battle. So previously we had the icons drawn on the map there, but they still were not doing anything. But now those effects are implemented, and we can start to use those to balance the gameplay and hopefully have some strategic effect on where players will want to place their units before combat begins. Moving forward, we have the first episode of the JpnMana podcast. So one of the main goals, I guess, for JpnMana is to help push forward some of the research in educational tools and resources that are available, not just for language learning, although that's the one that JpnMana is focused on, but there are a lot of other really good tools out there that are being developed at research institutes and so on, and those don't often get as much publicity as I think they should. So this will hopefully address that. The goal is to talk to a variety of different researchers in that space. So either data mining for educational purposes or education related topics, largely computerized. Particularly with online education, so on and so forth. But the first episode of the podcast is with Dr. Ryan Springs. He's a cognitive linguistics researcher at Tohoku University, and we talk about a variety of things, and that is now available. So if you are interested in that, you can check it out on the YouTube channel. Last but not least, as I mentioned, we didn't get to the battlefields, and we didn't get to playtesting levels 10 through 20. So those tasks will carry over into the next sprint, into Sprint 12, next 2 months. So we'll see those hopefully at the end of February. Good news is we handled the biggest, most difficult tasks, and the easiest tasks we didn't get around to. As always, thank you for watching and tuning in. If you're interested in following along more closely, we have Reddit page where we post a text-based dev blog, and Twitter account and Facebook, and you can see those links below. As always, thanks again for tuning in to hear the update of JpnMana, and we appreciate your support and interest. Thank you very much. Have a good one. Okay, so one final thing is that I have recorded a few times throughout the past 2 weeks, here and there, and I'm going to try something slightly different where I'm going to add some appendix, essentially, I guess, to this progress report. So if you're interested, you can keep on watching, and you can see some of the in progress of my development. If you're not, thanks for watching anyway. And well, I'll leave it at that. So we had 2 bugs this past week with skill variations. The initial bug was an issue with clearing the action that a hero performs after they performed it, which was removing whether or not the variation occurred. And the second bug was with the action effects being constantly reapplied to the hero that is being affected by it. So we have a hero that was hit by some variation, and the effect should be applied, and maybe that effect should only last for 1 round, but every time the new round was occurring, that same hero was being reapplied with the same effect from the variation, which was not what was intended. Okay, man. All right, so it is February 9th, and I am trying to finish all of these sprint tasks by the 15th. So we've got a little less than a week to go, 6 days. And, okay, we had this clever idea of adding variations to attacks, and that has proven to be far more difficult than we were interested. And I do not have a great solution. Long story short, it is what it is. It's just complicated for a few reasons. But anyway, I've got 15 hours of tasks to get done in the next 6 days. So I think it's the 15th is our goal. That's Tuesday. So we're shooting for Tuesday to be done. And I have I'm still on the first task. Well, kind of the second task. So I gave myself 3 hours to do technical design, and I gave myself 6 hours to implement it. And I am still on the technical design because in the beginning of the week, I spent more time doing this podcast and the beginning of the sprint, doing the vlog from last sprint, and then doing the podcast episode, editing that, and it takes time. But so those tasks got done, but then implementation wise, right, development wise, I'm still on the first task. Well, second, I don't know. I called the design step finished. Mostly I do have the design, but man, the devil is in the details, right? Once you start doing that implementation. And so that's where I'm at. No one ever said this was easy. Well, so there we are. I think the plan is to wake up early Thursday morning, get a good night's sleep tonight, wake up at maybe 5 tomorrow, and then really just try to bang on this sucker and get it done. If that's done, I think doing the terrain effects for battle will be easier from the battlefield, but we'll see. All right, I'm going to try to explain the fun that we had with this last little bug with applying effects based on the variations of attacks. And this is a fun one. So, pretty basic scenario. We have Momotaro, and he attacks our Knoll, and that should be simple enough. So basically all of the actions have a perform function, and the perform function generates what we call as an action result. The action result is then passed over to a resolve action in some process in the main loop to calculate a bunch of different values. And what we're interested in is this value here, the variation 0 being active. So there's a little list of variations on each action, so on and so forth. And I expected to find the bug in essentially the new code that I was writing, because that is where most of the changes were being made. However, that is not where the bug was. What happens is inside the action result, a bunch of values get set. Being active, if the variation is active, is one of those, but then there's a reference to the original action, the owner that did the action, the target of the action, so on and so forth. And when all of that happens, it gets bundled up into a nice little package and gets put onto some effect that is being created or applied. And rather than being an issue with the new code of the effect, the actual problem was back in the main loop with this fun little guy. Early on, I thought of, I need to clear the actions of the hero when their turn is over. But that was also clearing the variations, and that was resetting the values of the effect and erasing the values in the reference of the action result, so on and so forth. And it doesn't help that it's, a few layers deep inside the different call stacks. So we have this resolve action. We've got the action result on the effect, but it was being deleted or reset. So literally an hour this morning. It's now midnight, so an hour or so, hour and a half tonight to literally find a one-line code bug fix. That is programming, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for tuning in. So this next bit's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. So, okay, we have our action occurring. Any effects that get applied from that action need to keep a reference. Well, not a reference. They need to keep a copy of that action for the duration that effect created by that action continues to persist. And that is not a great way to do that. Previously, action effects didn't have this problem because they didn't have a reference to the action result or the action or really anything. Oof, that's going to be hard to fix. I do not have a good solution for that yet. The new issue is that variations of actions are changing the way that effects are operating. And so maybe what I need to do is reduce the size rather than pass the whole action result and all the data along with it. Make a smaller flag that just says where that where that effect originated from. That might be the solution. Fun with programming, eh? You know, I just thought of another solution. This could work pretty well. Inside this guy, basically we could limit effects from variations to only operate for one round. So after it detects that it's active, it runs through and sets whatever stuff is necessary. And then down here at the bottom, we can just say, all right, now variation that has already done its job, you're no longer active. Limits us to only have, yeah, you know, that might work. I'll have to that might work. I'll have to double check to make sure that the effects don't ever need that information, but I don't think they ever do. So we might have a really clever solution here. That's, again, a one-line code fix. Good stuff. All right, well, it's 12:30 at night, but we got one of the variations to work. So the defensive stance is working. So that's nice. Tomorrow, it's 12:30, so I'm going to go to bed. Tomorrow, I will try to tackle the next variation, and I forget which one that is. Let's see if we can find it real quick. Yeah. Okay, the next and final variation. So I have a variation for additional damage. That one's working. I have a variation for a defensive stance, which is an example of adding an effect to the attacker, which is fine. And the other variation that I need to try to do tomorrow is an additional target. And similar to adding an effect, that one might be a little bit heavy. Anyway, that's what we got on the docket tomorrow. So let's see what we can do. Not bad. All right, we're not doing too bad. We still got. It's the 9th. So we still. No, it's the 10th now. We still have 5 days to go, and we only have one more variation to go. So we got a chance. We got a chance. All right. That's it. It's time for bed. All right, folks. Well, it's 6 something, but we're up and we need to get changed and let's get started. All right. Well, not necessarily the nicest weather here today in Tokyo, but let's be honest, without a little bit of coffee, I don't think anything's going to get done. That's what we need, a little bit of go juice. Kudos to our friends at the 7-Eleven.